We've touched on corruption, energy. Let's take a look now at human rights. We're joined by Shenilla of Amnesty International. She is the executive director of the organization in South Africa. Shenilla Mohamed, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. So as we take a look at the president's speech, the anticipated speech tonight, you believe that he has not fulfilled his duty as the leader of our country by failing to uphold the fundamental human rights of everyone living here. How so?
Afternoon, Dudu, and good afternoon to your viewers. Yes, unfortunately, and it does pain us to say this because, is that President Ramaphosa has failed dismally. He has failed dismally in ensuring that people's basic human rights, as enshrined in the Constitution, are upheld. And what am I talking about here? I'm talking about, basic things like the right to water, the right for women and children not to be exposed to abnormal sort of a pandemic of violence against women and femicide, for education, equal and quality education for children not to be falling in pit latrines and dying. I mean, we've got loads and loads of plans, Dudu, but we're not seeing the impact or the change to people's basic human rights on the ground.
Speaking of which, we haven't even spoken about healthcare. You mentioned water and gender-based violence, but also something that many South Africans are also struggling with is access to basic healthcare.
Absolutely. And, the present energy situation, the load shedding is really exacerbating what was really quite a crisis situation in many of the areas of the country. We have massive inequalities. So, we have, people who are living in certain suburbs where they have money to put in generators and, solar systems, etc. But the majority of the people are living in areas and under conditions where they don't have access to those facilities. And, of course, that has a snowball effect on their ability to access health care. We have seen horror stories coming out of hospitals. People are dying unnecessarily due to the lack of proper, infrastructure and care being taking place at hospitals. But also, I think, what we also have to recognize is that the country and the globe is going through a recession of sorts. And so we have a lot of people who are struggling to even put food, one meal on the table. And I think, that we think, shacks spring up everywhere we go. And this is an indication of a country that, where human rights are in a state of decline, where people cannot even access basic housing, basic health care, basic education, things like that. And I think that, the president needs tonight to actually not only be open and transparent and honest with the people of South Africa and tell us, where they have failed, but also not to put any other elaborate plans on the table, but just tell us how he's going to deliver on existing plans. I mean, a question I have is what happened to all that money, that everything that was gathered and generated, when the women went out into the street to demand action for gender-based violence? I mean, where are we with that? What happened to that? Women are still dying on a daily basis. Children are still dying, Dudu.
To your point, Shenilla, what is it that you and I can do, right? What is the role of active citizenry in getting South Africa out of where it is? Not completely, right, without the help of government, but you and I are not victims here as well. Otherwise, we'll be talking about this again next year when we preview SONA.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think, Dudu, absolutely we're not victims. And you see that, many citizens and active citizens and civil society organizations are out there doing what they can to not only assist, but to support, people who are in dire situations. But I think, at the end of the day, according to our constitution, the buck ends with the president. The buck ends with, the state. And I think, one of the things we can do is, first of all, not allow our government to shy away from accountability. I think as active citizens, we have to demand accountability, but we also have to demand action and justice against those that are violating, their role as government officials. I mean, we have seen corruption all over the place. Look, one of the reasons the health sector and the education sector and all these sectors were in a crisis even ahead of or before the energy crisis is because we have seen loads of corruption. And I think money that was earmarked for people and their basic rights has been stolen through corrupt means. Every rand that is stolen through corruption is a rand that belongs to the people of South Africa, and that we have the right to demand action against corruption, but visible action. And I think, with the role we can play is really not step back in our demands for justice, for the president to deal with issues of corruption, but also accountability when it comes to state coffers. How are they spending our money? It's our money, Dudu. The taxpayers' money. How are they spending it? And why are the people of South Africa so many decades later still living in dire conditions? It's unacceptable.
Shenilla, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time this afternoon. Shenilla Mohamed is the Executive Director of Amnesty International South Africa. From human rights to higher education.